Welcome to our video training session on 5 critical catalysts for developing God's vision for your ministry. I'm Marshall Shannon with Ministry Design Training. The starting point in your journey to develop God's vision for your ministry does not start with the search for the vision, in quotation marks. It starts much earlier with an understanding of key components that lay the foundation for your discovery and development of God's vision for your church. Think of a puzzle with 500 pieces or 50 pieces, where the pieces are shown to you over time and they're handed to you over time, and you're able to pick them out and put them together to see the whole picture. So here is where I suggest you start developing God's vision for your ministry. The following critical catalyst can serve to move you forward toward the discovery and development of God's vision for your congregation. One of these catalysts leads to another, and they create, so to speak, a pair of binoculars that will give you insight into God's destination for your church and ministry. So let me suggest to you that you do 2 things. Number 1 is that you take notes. There's an outline provided for you. You can pause this video, scroll down, click on it, and open up the outline and print it out, and then start taking notes. Number 2, along with that resource, if you scroll down below the resource section is a comment box where you can pause the video, come down and type in any comment or question that you have, and we'll interact with you as you move toward discerning what is God's vision for your ministry. I will warn you, if you hit the submit button on the comment box, it will start the video all over again. So you can type them in there as you go, but don't submit them until you're finished watching the video. So, what is the first catalyst to helping you develop God's vision for your ministry? And the first one, I believe, is for us to have an understanding of what is congregational code. Well, as we talk about this, let me tell you that in our subscription base, we have done a video entitled Understanding Congregational Code. But there is, congregational code is the makeup of your congregation, its personality, its essence, its soul. It's who it is in its person. And you have to see it and know it for a while to begin to understand it. So when we talk about code and congregational code, we are talking about the personality makeup of your congregation. We are also talking about a perception method. Often we use the left brain that's in our noggin. And by that I mean it is talking about our logic and our reasoning. And so we depend on that. I'll give you an example. Organizational coaching and organizational science is where we use our logic and reasoning to solve problems. It's why we teach and others teach that if you'll develop systems or programs, policies, procedures, and everything that goes organizationally, and we teach this in our subscription, Ministry Design subscription series, on how to vet a new project and how to organize a new program, how to make certain you have all the components. Well, those are left brain activities where we're plugging in and dealing logically and reasonably with the processes that make up our ministry, our church. And it's left brain. But the right brain is where we are going to use our intuition. So here is the difference. A church invites me to come in and do an organizational ministry audit. And I am interviewing people in the church ministry leaders, pastoral staff, support staff, and laborers, volunteer laborers who are working in the ministry, people who are visiting but haven't yet joined, and people who have been a part of the church and left. And I'm looking at I'm doing a SWOT analysis. What's the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of this ministry? And it primarily is a left brain thing where I'm interviewing, inspecting, investigating everything ministry there. Their church family, their church facilities, and how they're organized, how they function. So we're looking at their family, we're looking at their facilities, we're looking at their function. And we come out with a report that helps them look where they can improve the processes. We're not getting into personalities and talking about how bad or how good a ministry leader is, whether it's the senior pastor, the executive pastor, the youth pastor, the children's director, and so on. So as we look at these things, we're looking at it primarily with the left brain at organizational science. With the right brain, now we're into organic, and we're looking at something that's a little more difficult to put our thumb on. It's not necessarily seen on paper and by interviews in that way. Let me explain to you the difference. This is where your intuition, right brain thinking, is using your intuition. It's what you feel and sense with those extra senses that God gave you. And so understanding this is to help us that we can analyze and then understand that we're looking at our congregation and we're probably not going to get there with your left brain thinking. It's going to have to be with your right brain thinking that you begin to gain some intuition as God puts the pieces of the puzzle together, and you stand back not in just having me come in for a weekend or a week to help your congregation with a ministry audit, which is organizational and left brain, but it's coming in and spending time with your congregation, meeting with bunches of them, and trying to discern what makes them tick. Who are they at their very core, at their very essence of who they are? What's their personality? How are they made up? How do they think? What's important to them? It's pulling together the whole person of your collective congregation. Along with this code is for you to discover your congregational code. Again, we have a video training session on discovering your congregational code that's in our subscription-based series on ministry design. Here's what I want to tell you. Help you understand why is this important. Why is understanding code and determining, identifying, understanding your congregational code, why is it so important? Why would I take the time to put this as the foundational or first catalyst toward developing God's vision for your ministry? Well, the first thing is I have found, and it's taken me 35 years to begin to put the pieces of the puzzle together, as to why so many of our pastors and ministry teams are struggling and finding it very explosive experience to navigate change in their churches. So here's what happens. If you can understand what I'm saying about what is code, and you can discover your personal congregation's code, it will help you and provide a safer navigation of change in your church. Here's the truth. Everything in life is changing. God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But for the rest of us, we're all changing, and the world is changing. And our churches are going to be changing as it grows and develops and gets itself ready and equipped to carry out God's calling for your individual church. I can't say it's going to provide safe navigation of change. It's safer, because I can't give that guarantee. But I will tell you this. If you can know what your code is, you won't violate it by recommending a change or going about change in a certain way that violates their code, and they respond in a very strong, passionate, energized way that is in opposition to your very existence. And so why is it important that you understand this? It's because it will protect your leadership and allow you to lead change. I'll give you an example. Years ago, one of my mentors had gone through and presented and navigated through the change of a key policy, a monetary policy, in their church. He had a much bigger church than me. He was much older than me. He is much older than me. And I looked to him and would ask for advice and would go and apply what he did. So when it came time for me, he and I discussed this policy, and I said, well, we have the same policy, and it's crippling our ability to move forward in fulfilling our mission so that we can reach God's vision for our church. And it's a hindrance. He said, we had the same experience. Here's how we changed it. And he went through the steps for me as the leader and our leadership team, and how to go about and talk to the congregation, and how to bring about and safely navigate that policy change. When he did it, he lost no one. When I did it, I lost 58 people in basically one weekend. Our churches are not far apart in distance, of location. We're both in the upstate of South Carolina, not in the type people who came in. They're all white-collar people. In the way that our denomination, we're both Baptist. In the training and culture of our people, the same. But when it came to the code, he got away with it, and I did not. And it blew up on me. Why? Similar congregations in the similar part of the country with similar doctrinal beliefs, theology, leadership styles, polity, and practice. But the codes of our congregation were completely different. And I violated our code at our church. And my mentor did not violate the code of his congregation at his church. He was able to navigate the change and move his ministry forward to reach people with the gospel. Me, it set us back because we lost 58 people. It disrupted and disturbed and caused us to delay the movement toward what God had for us. So why is this important? Your leadership potential and your leadership success is directly connected to your understanding of code and the discovering and understanding of your congregation's code. Well, this leads us, as we talk about this, let me give you this visual aid. And there are 5 catalysts in this. The first one is code, and it's pushing you toward the second catalyst. And the second catalyst is understanding your conduct or your context. In this, I mean 2 things, your situation and your surroundings. And so you want to take a look at both of these. Your situation is your church, and your surroundings is your community. And so your context is made up of 3 components, your church, your community, and we're going to get to the third part of your context that ties those 2 together. And so as you look at this, you want to look at the parts that make up both your situation and your surroundings. And the players, look at their positions. Are they a part of your team, part of the community team, part of the whole? You want to look at their profile. How are they put together? An assessment of their personality profile, of a DISC assessment. How are they made up? And then you look at the parts and the players to begin getting an idea of the place where God has put you. So you're going to take a look at your situation and your surroundings. And there are 3 components. The three components are your congregation, your community, and your connectivity between the two. So as we talk about this, we want to talk about the bandwidth. Understanding your context is identifying the bandwidth of each of these. What I mean by bandwidth is the capabilities and the capacity of your church, your community, and your potential connectivity between your church and your community. When I speak of capability, think of a bucket, and you're going to fill it with water or with corn seed or with apples, but you're going to fill it up. The bucket has the capability to hold water, but it also has a capacity, a limitation, that it can only hold so much water. And so as you go through this, you want to identify in your context the bandwidth of each of these. And so when it comes to your church and your community, you're looking at your manpower, the money that is available, the methods that have been used, the motivations of both, the property of both. And so as you're examining this, you want to go through your congregation and look at their profiles of the people, your personnel that you have, both volunteer and paid, and the people that are in your community. In your community, you want to understand them. So let me recommend that you take some time to go analyze, and I'll attach the document to this that deals with resources for understanding your community. And you've got demographics. That's what age are the people, the household, married, single, their income, do they own or rent their house? It's major bits of information that will tie you together with the demographics. Then the second one is psychographics, and that's their way of thinking, their lifestyle, their life perspective, how they view. It's cultural. It's how they view life. And the third one is eclographics. ECLA, called out, assembly. And this is where you look at church and see who's in church, who's de-churched, who needs to be re-churched, and who's unchurched. So it's understanding your context. And again, as you begin to gather in this information, understanding the code of your congregation, the context, the situation and surroundings where God has placed you, and then you look at the components, your congregation, your community, and your connectivity between the two of these, what ties you together. It will help you if you'll research to understand your community. So you want to interview maybe some local government officials, maybe some social workers, some nonprofit leaders and workers in those nonprofits. Maybe you want to go and talk to school principals, the leaders and the teachers, and even the support staff that comes with the schools, law enforcement. Talk to the captains, the lieutenants, the other officers, the sheriff's department, the city, our county law enforcement. And you want to be able to connect together and begin to get some ideas. God leads you to understand your church and your community and how they are connected together. I call it the connectivity quotient, or the connectivity IQ, that you would begin to see how you're pulled together, because this is all propelling you as a catalyst toward discovering and developing God's vision for your church. And so you want to determine how God has equipped you to reach your community for Christ. And the connection between your congregation and your community, you need to have discernment. And where are you healthy to help? That's where your health is the absence of disease and normal function. And where are you fit? And that deals with conditioning. So where are you fit to help? So you are looking to find out what's broke about your community. Where are the problems? Where are the challenges? Where does Satan have a stronghold? Where is their spiritual stronghold that Satan has on your community, that your church may be directed by God to attack, to go after. And so as you look at your context, you want to see where you might be well equipped and called of God to help and serve and carry the gospel into the lives of people in your community, which, by the way, means that you're going to have to balance your internal focus in your church, looking at those you've already reached, and your external focus into your community of those you've yet to reach. And so as you begin dealing with this, the second catalyst, and it is being pushed along by understanding your code, and now your context is going to push along the third of these. And the third catalyst is identifying your core values. It's understanding your core values. So what exactly are core values? You hear people talk about this in profit and nonprofit organizational science, and they're trying to tell you, well, you need to identify what's important to you. Well, let me just run down through some things. First, it's your internal navigational system. They guide us and lead us. They are at the core. Your core values are at the center of how you choose and how you make decisions. So it's a decision mechanism. And it's important because they describe not only how we make decisions, but how we behave and act, and they describe who we are. They define who we are. They are the unspoken rules and regulations that guide and govern our lives. They are the terms and conditions by which we live. They are our passionate priorities for life and living. They are what is important to us as individuals and as congregations and as denominations. They drive everything we do, and identifying them is key. So, why is it key? So, why is it important? Well, you need to understand that they are important because they drive and motivate our congregations. So here's the warning to you. Whether you identify them correctly or not, they are still driving your congregation. And if they don't know why they're doing what they're doing, and you don't identify your actual core values, not your aspirational core values, which you aspire to have, which you know ought to be biblical values or God's value system, and what's important to him ought to be important to you. We aspire to those, but we all have actual core values, what they really are, the reality, and you need to identify the reality because they are driving your congregation in their collective behavior as to who they hire, what ministries they decide to do, how they fund and spend the money that you collect as a church, who they target to reach and minister to, who they accept into their congregation. All of this is driven by your collective core values. So if you want to have harmony in your church and have unity of purpose and passion, and you want to have harmony in mind, body, and soul, then you need to make certain that you have identified the core values and led and managed your church so that you are marshaling the forces together. So here's why we have new members classes and have those conversations with people who are considering becoming an official part and of our congregation to become members of our church. Is that if they have a different set of core values, they're not going to blend well with your code of your congregation. They're not going to blend well, and you can end up with competing value systems. And so they are key to your efforts if you're going to move your ministry forward and have unity and harmony and be effective and efficient. Then you as a pastor need to agree with and have the same value system and the same core values as your congregation, and your congregation with you. and with your leadership team and your officers and support staff and your ministry leaders and your volunteer laborers in your ministry. So one of the things you cover as you are helping them learn who you are to know whether or not your church is God's place for them is to be able to teach them what your core values are and what you aspire to and how it all works together. And it is a catalyst towards you eventually grasping and understanding what is God's vision for your ministry. Where is he taking you, your destination, his preferred future for your church? What is going to be and do in the future, where it's headed. They are, these core values, your core values are foundational to our next catalyst that we're going to describe. And so they give direction to our next catalyst. And as we look at this, you've got three: code, context, and core values. And so the fourth catalyst that is going to be used, I believe, of God, and as you go about these exercises to piece together the puzzle of what does God's vision look like for us, and how do we develop it so others buy into it, take ownership of it, and want to join us in the journey that God has for our church. And the fourth is your mission, and it is defining your mission. Your mission is your purpose. It is what we are supposed to be doing. And so your code is your personality, and it is defining who you are. And then as you look at your context, this is your place, and then your core values are your priorities and your passions. But then your mission is your purpose. And so it is why your church exists. It is what you are supposed to be doing. It is the primary reason God has called your church, God has called your church to accomplish. I want you to consider for a moment a TV series that is playing in today's marketplace. And I have direct TV, so I have satellite TV, so I get the channel. But the TV series is Restaurant Impossible. If you've watched this, then you know that there is a lot of correlation between church, leading and managing church, and leading and managing a restaurant. So let me ask you, with this series, and Robert comes into these as the chef and as the guy who's going to bring about transformation. Kind of like, think for a moment of Church Impossible. Well, he brings about transformation. And he always has to ask, what is the purpose of their restaurant, of their diner? Is it nutrition? Is that the main purpose, is so that their community can eat healthy food? Or is it profit to put into line the pockets of the owner or the staff? Is it pleasure because they want people to enjoy eating the food, whether it's good for them or not? Is it community, so you're drawing people together in the restaurant? Is it to create jobs for the staff of the restaurant? Is it to create memories in the community where everybody loves this restaurant because it's where they grew up and became good friends, and it's where lives intersected? Is it a restaurant because it needs a way to survive financially, to live? And so defining the purpose of the restaurant, now move that over to the church. Defining your mission directs how you design your ministry. And you've got to define your mission. So back to the Restaurant Impossible. What are the parts of the diner? Now listen to me for a moment. You've got a menu. You've got a staff, wait staff, cook staff, custodial staff. You've got an environment, a facility, exterior, parking lights, curb, pavement, sidewalks, flowers, trees. You've got the building and all the exterior finishes of that. You've got the surroundings around the restaurant as to what it is like. And as you look at this, you can begin looking at the parts and think, I look at the exterior, then the interior. There's the front of the store, the middle of the store, and the back of the store. The back of the store where the food is prepared and cleaned up, and you're storing the food and all the equipment and utensils. The middle of the store where your tables and maybe your drink station and so forth are there for your wait staff. And the front of the store is the lobby and your host and hostess where they greet the guest. Now, move all that over to church. And at any one point when Robert goes in these different situations all over the country, he has to help them define their mission, because they get off mission and stop accomplishing what their real calling is. And so as you look at this, if you have mission drift, you've gotten off mission, you need to go back and redefine or define again and declare your mission. And so as you consider Restaurant Impossible, consider the struggles with identifying and declaring an organizational purpose. So what is your congregational calling? What is your mandate, your divine directive? What has God called you to do? Are you there, a church just for Christians? Are you there to reach the lost? Are you there to make disciples? What are you there for? What is your calling? Next is your ministry. This is your divine directions. Your mission dictates your ministry direction. It's how you're going to do ministry, because you've got your methodology. So is your ministry going to be to a certain people and in a certain way? And do you feel that you're best equipped and called of God to reach certain people groups? When you go back to Matthew 28, to the Great Commission, 19 and 20 there of Matthew 28, and you look at the nations, some would understand that to mean people groups. So people groups around the planet, we are called to reach them as a church, as a mandate from the Lord. But for your individual church and your individual ministry as a church, are you best suited to reach a certain people group? And you are reaching a certain people group. You may not have just identified who that is, but you have a methodology and you've got a certain manpower. So identifying very clearly God's mission for your ministry and what that is, and no longer drifting away from that mission, is a catalyst. So as you look at your purpose, as you consider what God has called you to do, you need to get this all together and allow it to propel you into the fifth catalyst. And so your code is the personality of your church. Your context is your place. Your core values are your priorities, your passions, what's most important to you. And your mission is your purpose, your calling as a church. And the fifth catalyst is your visionary process. This is where you're going to go through the process of discovering and developing God's vision for your ministry. And I'm going to give to you a group of components that are all a part of the visionary process. Andy Stanley wrote a book back in 99, or it was published in 1999, on visioneering. And he deals with, biblically, goes through the story of Nehemiah. In this, he may have coined, but someone coined the term visioneering. And it's the process of discovering and developing and carrying out the whole scope of vision. And so we have pulled together our training on vision and called it Vision. Don't lead your church without it. And it's a series of 9 training videos that is a growing series. In other words, we're going to add video training to this series to cover every component of the visioneering process. And so as we do this, let's talk first that you've got to define what is vision. Technically, what is it? What does the world say vision is? Culturally, in your community or your country, your area, what is it? Biblically, what does God say vision is? And historically, how have we looked at vision? but you've got to define what it is. Before you can discover it, you need to know what it is and agree what it is so you know what you're looking for. And then there are descriptions. Descriptions would be how you explain God's vision to your congregation. It's how you provide illumination. Think cleaning your windows and skylights of your home and to let the light in. And so you're going to use word pictures, storytelling. You're going to paint a verbal, use a verbal brush, paintbrush, a verbal paintbrush to paint and describe so your people can understand what you're saying. And then you're going to make some distinctions. These are the differences, the comparisons and the differences between what vision is and other things. And all of this, putting this together, is throwing you toward. It's allowing the pieces of the puzzle to be put together where you can look at it as you put the puzzle of God's vision together for your ministry by following the catalyst that I'm giving you, is that over time and over the period of God working with you in this spiritual adventure, that you're going to be able to begin to have it come together. The fog is going to lift. It's going to clear. And you're going to be able to see it, and others are going to be able to see it. And so there are distinctions that tells them what it is and what it is not. And then you've got to have leaders. Someone has got to lead, and someone's got to labor with you. Then there are deliberations that you have. And so you talk about the discovery. For instance, not every idea you have is vision material, but every vision begins as an idea. Therefore, we use the catalyst to give God time and a chance to mature us in our thinking and perception of His will for the future of our church. We have to give some deliberations in the process of the visioneering. So, not all burdens are vision material, but many a vision has begun as a burden, giving you time, and that goes back to looking at your context of your church and your community and the connectivity and what you see about your community as to areas where you fit to meet a need or to be able to propagate the gospel or be able to make disciples. There are deliberations about this. So time in the visioneering process in applying all 5 of these catalysts, time allows us to discern which ideas and burdens to throw the weight of our lives behind. So the conclusion is this: you aren't wasting your time by digging into the catalyst. You're actually giving God a chance to work in your life and the lives of your leadership team and your congregation to discern what God is thinking, what is God's mind on every matter, what is His will for you and for your congregation, and you have to give some time to discovering and discerning these things. And so your discerning God's ordained vision will eventually feel like a moral imperative. So God's ordained vision will be in line with what God is up to in and through your church. So you will be able to discern and deliberate what is correct and what to include in your vision. So there is next, in your discovery of this and your discernment of these things, sometimes a delay. And it's what we do while we wait on God to reveal His vision for our church. So we would interview others, we would talk, we would listen, we would investigate other ministries and our ministries. We will read and inquire and observe. We will inspect other ministries. And during the time that you're going through these catalysts, you are to interview people. You are to investigate other ministries. You are to inspect yourself in these other ministries. And you are to interact with them and begin to intertwine your life with the lives of others in your congregation and then in your community. And it's all pieces of the puzzle to catapult you toward discovering and discerning and developing God's vision for your ministry. So don't worry about the delay. Use the time to let God do His work in and through you. Then you're going to have a design. And the design of this is where you are going to figure out, how do we state God's vision for our ministry? And the goal should be to be perhaps brief, but certainly clear, concise, and complete in stating, so that everybody can understand God's vision. So how much do you include in your statement? First off, I believe that your vision, God's vision for your ministry, is really a living, breathing thing or document that develops with your ministry over time. But how much do you include in the statement? And there is no small amount of discussion and disagreement over how to design your vision statement, your vision document. So let me give you 3 things to consider. You can take and write out everything that you've learned about your vision and put it into a long-form, full explanation document. Secondly, you can do one that's medium form, that is a paragraph or a couple of paragraphs, but not pages. And thirdly, the short form is T-shirt length. It's a paragraph or less, just a statement. It might be 6 words. Would have fit on a T-shirt is one way to look at it. And so you've got the long form that somebody could read that and fully understand your journey to discovering and developing God's vision for your ministry and all of its components that we're talking about, the 5 catalysts and the whole parts of the visioneering process. And you're putting that together to help them. And so your development of God's vision for your ministry is how you're going to cultivate it over time, and the attention and the testing that you do. And so you test the design on some people. If it doesn't inspire you or them, then keep working on it to perfect it. If people aren't passionate about it and they don't buy into it and take ownership of it, if it doesn't reinforce your convictions, if it doesn't confirm your commitment, if it isn't contagious, then you need to keep working on it. Let me give you this one visual image. On my way to a town south of us, about 2 hours, Augusta, is a church that the architect and the building has been built with a steeple that is about, 2 or 3 or 4 times too big for the size of the building. It's out of proportion. And one of my architect friends and I were driving down, and I asked him, I said, what happened there? And he said, the architect quit designing too soon. The architect quit designing the building too soon, because had he kept developing the design, he would have gotten everything within proportion, and it would have worked to have enhanced and helped the church fulfill its mission so it could reach God's preferred future, its vision for them. Instead, it was just an oddity and a distraction, and it looked like somebody didn't know what they were doing. They quit designing too soon. And so don't quit designing. Test the design of your vision development. Is it detailed? Is it change-oriented? Does it promise a better future? Does it solve a problem or meet a need? Is it God-sized or just man-sized? Is it God's vision or someone else's vision? How is it completed? You probably won't complete your vision in your first whack at it as you're developing it. So what if God reveals it to you progressively? Meaning over time, as you mature and your ministry matures, so does the understanding of God's vision for your ministry. It is if it is, and I think it is, a living and breathing document, you will continue to cultivate it. And so it doesn't end there. Another part of the catalyst of the visioneering process is your display. This is your marketing and communication. How will you present it? On your website, in your brochures. So here is what is taught about what percentage of people create vision for organizations, what percentage of people catch vision for organizations for your church. Well, I've been told that the ratio is 25% of the people on the planet are capable of seeing and creating vision. They can see it. All right, they perceive it. They have intuition. They can develop it, discover it, and move ahead. 75% of the people have to be caught and taught the vision. So when you display your God's vision for your ministry to your congregation and to your community, understand that you need to do it in a way that helps them buy into it and take ownership of it, and you'll know that when they are become zealous about it. It becomes a mandate, a moral imperative that they fulfill the vision, and they are going to throw behind it the full weight of who they are and who you are as a church, and enlist the help of everyone in your church and in your community to fulfill God's vision for your work. Well, you display it in such a way that your visual aids help you. And then your discourse. These are your conversations. You communicate it through your display, and you communicate it through your conversations. And so how are you going to talk about it? How will you tell people about it? How are you going to explain God's vision? How will you explain the what, and how will you paint the mental picture of it? So your presentations, when are you going to unfold God's vision for your ministry? Where are you going to do it? Who's going to do it? The leaders of your congregation, the stakeholders, the influencers, who are you going to present it to your community? Where are you going to talk about it? Social media, in your congregation, person to person, official leaders, key influencers, stakeholders, your ministry leaders. If you may have, as a small or medium-sized church, matriarchs and patriarchs who really are the leader of your church. You're holding the position of ministry leader, official position, but someone else is calling the shots. So in your small groups, in your town halls, in your services, in your special called meetings, how are you going to communicate it to your congregation? And then you want to have the conversations with your community, public meetings, town halls, focus groups to find out how they respond to maybe God's vision for your ministry. And you're solving a problem, meeting a need. You're helping them as a part of your church's calling. And as you're propagating and preaching the gospel, you are living out your faith, but you've gone to show God's love to them, and you're fleshing out your faith. You're living out your faith. And so you've got then the delivery, and this is where you're going to implement God's vision for your ministry. You've got a plan for the vision, a strategic plan, and now you're going to implement it. So how will you execute God's vision for your ministry? How will you know when you have reached your vision? At some point, it will be fulfilled. You'll fulfill it. Moses didn't get to the promised land, but a certain portion of the Israelites did. And that part of the vision of a land filled with milk and honey, with all of its fruit and vegetables and animals and the land and the water and the rivers and the streams and so forth. They fulfilled it. How will you manage your process of implementation? How will you monitor your progress and productivity? And how will you modify your game plan as you perform? All of these are a part of your visioneering process. So it's one thing to come up with a vision and put it into a statement. It's another thing to put together a plan to execute, to implement the vision. So you're going to do more than just discover it, develop it, display it, and talk about it. Now you're going to put it into action so you can carry it out. And the last part of this catalyst is defending God's vision to make it stick. Andy Stanley wrote a book, How to Make Your Vision Stick. So how will you protect your vision? How will you provide for your vision? How will you preserve your vision until it is fulfilled? All of these things are catalysts as you consider them and strain and work at them and labor over them and get frustrated with it and walk away from it for a bit and perhaps enlist new people to come in and help you, whatever your journey looks like. That these are catalysts to propel you toward discovering and developing God's vision for your ministry so you can partner with Him to carry out the greatest cause of all time. So you can be a part of partnering with God in His redemptive passion for mankind. Your part and your place and your calling, your purpose, as you carry out in your context, your place, what God would have you to do. Now, as you look at this, 5 catalysts: code, context, core values, mission, and vision. To put them into play, to go and pursue each one of these so that eventually God lifts the fog or cleans the windows or cleans your binoculars or brings the pieces of the puzzle together and you're missing the pieces and you're trying to see how it all fits together and it's just not clear. Going through this journey of these catalysts may be just the thing that God has for you to help you discover His mind on every matter, on every ministry in your church and for your church as a whole. Well, this video that I'm giving you right now is just the tip of the iceberg. It is just the first in a series of videos to help you discover and develop God's vision for your ministry. I mentioned earlier that the rest of the iceberg is contained in our video training series called Vision, Don't Lead Your Church Without It. And so let me talk to you about this option, and this is an option that you can use in order to move your ministry forward, is to step further into the visioneering process, and we answer all of those things we just gave you in the visioneering process. We go through them in 9 or more videos with support documents and online Q&A. And so this is something that answers the following questions. This series, this training series on vision, Don't Lead Your Church Without It, answers what is vision, how do we discover God's vision, how do we develop it, who leads the visioneering process, how do we lead the process, why is vision important, what will it do for our churches, how do you tell others about it, and how do you convince others to take ownership of it. And so Don't Lead Your Church Without It series, you want to know, well, okay, what's it going to cost? Well, our regular price is $79, but our introductory price is $49. And this is a one-time purchase that gives you lifetime access, or as long as the website is available, as long as we're doing this, it gives you access at no additional cost to any new videos we add to the series. So you can click on the link below to purchase it right now. Or your second option is to deepen your efforts, is to subscribe to our Ministry Design Training Series on a monthly basis. So you'll receive all of our services where we talk about more than just visioneering, but we talk about the whole ministry design process where we explain code, context, core values, mission, strategic planning, implementation. We talk about outreach, discipleship, leadership. We deal with the science of church and understanding what it is, how it grows, and what stops it, what challenges are there. We talk about organizational science. We teach all of these things in our full services. So you're probably asking, what's this going to cost? Well, the monthly subscription for one user is $24.95, or your entire leadership team can subscribe for $49.95 per month. There's no long-term contract or commitment. You can cancel your subscription at any time, and there's a no-risk money-back guarantee. If you don't think we've delivered value for your ministry, within 60 days you can ask for your money back, and we'll refund it. It's no hassle. So click now on the link to one of the 2 links below to start strengthening your ministry. Well, I'm Marshall Shannon, a ministry design coach with Ministry Design Training, Ministry Design Concepts. You can reach me at this email address or either one of these 2 phone numbers, and we'll be more than happy to talk with you as you seek to move your ministry forward for Christ. May the Lord bless your every effort.